Hello, Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter here. We've got Ukraine, Israel, and the EU all doing, as George Carlin said, CTD, circling the drain. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And in case you didn't know, I'm a big George Carlin fan. My two favorite comedians, actually, I mean, a big Lenny Bruce, of course, but well known would be Carlin and Pryor because they didn't give a crap. They weren't, I like Chappelle too. I like people that don't give a crap. I like people who like say, show me the third rail so I can hop on it, that truly exercise free speech. That's the only way really to be a professional. Okay, Scott Ritter, CTD, circling the drain. When I look around, let's start here. Everybody should know what I mean. And I don't have to elaborate. We can see it for ourselves. Let's talk about Ukraine. When I say circling the drain, your thoughts on what's going on in Ukraine. And let me add this. Scott and I, for months and months and months, over a year, have been saying, how does this end? And we've been saying it's going to collapse. It's gotta collapse. At any rate, Scott. And collapse doesn't mean in 5 days. It could mean 3 months. It could mean 5 months. But it seems to be falling apart. I'll put it like this: when the women are in the street protesting, your society's in a whole lot of trouble. You ain't getting out of that one. All right, Scott. Ukraine. Where are we?
Well, I mean, just so people can understand what Gar and I have been saying for some time now, let's liken it to a structural engineer who is doing inspections of bridges. And he comes up to a bridge and he sits there and he probes the concrete and he goes, that's not as strong as it needs to be. It's crumbling. The deterioration rate on this concrete is going to be accelerated. He scrapes the steel, goes, that's oxidizing at a rate quicker than designed to do. That means that it's also going to lose its tensile strength. And when you combine the way this thing was structured is that the concrete reinforced with steel was going to be able to hold up weight bearing to there, spread around this. But as this collapses, this bridge is coming down. People go, but trucks are going over right now. Oh, no, it's not going down now, but it's in a state of collapse. And this bridge will inevitably collapse. And it's going to collapse sooner rather than later because of the rate of deterioration. And then a hurricane comes in and exposes even more steel. And all of a sudden you're going, whoa, it's going to collapse even quicker. But trucks are still going over it, man. It's not collapsed. It's a good bridge. No, it's a bad bridge. The Ukrainian military has been in a state of collapse for some time now. It's inevitable. Garland and I have been saying it. Now, when exactly it's going to come down, you don't know. You don't know unless you have sensors all over the bridge and you've got it attached to a supercomputer. You can't say this is the point of failure. Well, we now have sensors on the bridge and we're looking at it. We're going, what's happening right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the bridge is falling down in front of your eyes. Okay. The trucks ain't going over the bridge anymore. It's not functioning. It's failing. It's collapsing. This is what circling the drain means. I mean, I assume you're talking about the shower, but we could be talking about a toilet too. The turd ain't gone down the bowl yet. But it's there. It's going down, and the turd is Ukraine. It's done, finished, over. There's still some collapsing to do. The truck drivers are screaming. They haven't hit the deck yet. They're not dead, but it's over. It's literally over. There's nothing Ukraine can do to stop this. You see the Ukrainian army. I mean, Syrskyi, the new general, the new Zaluzhny, Zaluzhny got fired. One of the reasons why he got fired is that he said this war has entered a stalemate and we need to go over to the general defensive. He said that last fall. And Zelensky was like, no. We got to continue to con the West to believe that we're attacking. We can take Crimea. We can take this. We can do that. All we need is more money, more equipment, more this, more that. And Zelensky's like, no, we need to go on the defensive and save what we have and preserve it. And so Zelensky fired him, replaced him with Syrskyi, who was supposed to be the butcher, the man who's going to attack. He did it in Bakhmut. He's the guy behind the continued attacks in Avdiivka. He's the guy behind the counteroffensive, attack. Comes into power 2 days later. He goes, we're going over on the general defensive. Why? Because there is no alternative. They tried to gather forces to launch an attack against Avdiivka. They have a handful of maneuver brigades left, brigades that have combat cohesiveness and the ability to act. One of them is the 3rd Assault Brigade. That's the renamed Azov Brigade. These are the Nazis. These are the hardcore Nazis who have been used as a fire brigade elsewhere. He brought 3 battalions of them together, ready to launch his attack, and Russia hit them with 2 Iskander missiles, and it no longer exists. It's gone, vaporized. Ukrainians haven't acknowledged this yet, but you can see it. Every report from the battlefield is that it is extremely stressful, extremely, we've lost control, and they have. They don't have the ability to maneuver anymore, which means that they're stuck holding fortified positions, but they also don't have the ability to stymie the Russian advance with artillery, with drones. I guess there's some areas in the battlefield where they've brought all their drones together to get momentary, fire support to stabilize, not to push the Russians back, but to stabilize. But everywhere else, they literally are just hunkered down in their holes, waiting for the Russians to come and kill them, which the Russians are doing every single day. It's not dramatic. It's not the big arrow going through. There's a tree line over there 100 meters away. In there's 350 Ukrainians dug in. So we're going to go and kill them all today. That's our job today, is to kill all the Ukrainians. And they blow them up with artillery. They maneuver in. They go in. They throw their grenades. The handful that survive surrender. Everybody else is killed. Then they dig in for the night. Usually when that happened in the past, they'd remove that. But the Ukrainians were able to put firepower down on the Russians so that some of the Ukrainians in the position could disengage and go back, be reinforced, and launch a counterattack. And then oftentimes they pushed the Russians out of that trench, and the Russians had to go back to their starting position. Positional warfare. That's not happening anymore. There is no Ukrainian counterattack because there is no artillery. There are no reserves to counterattack. So they take the trench line, kill these guys. The Ukrainians immediately throw in 350 new people who have no training, by the way, none whatsoever, into a trench line that they just dug up there, but it's not as extensive as this one. I mean, it's not deep, it's not fortified, it's not supporting. And the next day the Russians go, we're going to move 100 meters more, 300 meters more, kill those guys. And they do. This is happening all over the battlefield. The Russians are just going in and saying, that territory is ours. That territory is ours. And on the daily basis, people are looking at the map going, well, it's only moving a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, moving a little bit every day adds up. And it's over. And what's happening now is, as they continue to push forward, there's fewer people to put in the trench line. And they have no training. They are literally taking Down syndrome people and putting them in the front line. They're building battalions of women. And I'm not, here to pick on women, but they don't belong on the front line, not as a battalion. And they're putting them in there, and they're just all going to die. That's the reality. And sooner or later, there won't be anything left to put in. And at that point in time, the Russians just keep going. And then it's over. And I will say this. I spoke to a number of governors and a number of military commanders on my last trip. And the consensus was that by May, the dramatic things will happen on the battlefield by May. And by September, it's all she wrote, meaning that the Russians will probably have achieved the Dnieper line. Kharkov is theirs, Dnipropetrovsk is theirs, Mykolaiv is theirs, Odessa is theirs. Why? Because there's nothing left to defend. It's not like the Ukrainians are going to say, walk on in. There will be resistance. It will be bloody, but there won't be a cohesion. There won't be a singular front The resistance will be pockets of resistance, maybe guerrilla fighting inside a city or around, which the Russians will immediately annihilate. But it's over, and there's nothing the West can do to stop it. Let's hypothetically say that the Speaker of the House stopped playing presidential politics, because that's what he's doing right now, and said, yeah, here's the money. Well, we know that right off the bat, 60% of that $64 billion gets put into American military production. And most of that is to replace the stuff we've given the Ukrainians. So Ukraine gets nothing from it. It all comes to us. Then the other stuff that goes to Ukraine has to be built, which means they now have the money, but they have to let the contracts, because you can't have a contractual obligation unless you have money allocated. So you allocate the money, the contract. Some of these contracts require defensive lines to be built from scratch, production lines. That doesn't happen overnight. Other ones require modification and expansion. In any case, you have to hire people, train people, and get the production line up and running. So by the time the first item comes off the end, says complete, and gets packaged, we're talking months, if not years. I just gave you a timeline that says that by May, done. September, all she wrote. Ain't nothing that's going to get produced by this $64 billion you're going to be ready to send to Ukraine by September. Nothing. So this is what I mean, that there's nothing that can be done to salvage this situation. Not a damn thing.
Well, I also think, and I'll just throw this at you politically, having worked on the Hill before, I worked with Mr. Conyers, John Conyers' office. It's all politics, right? So here's what I think. If I'm a Republican, if I'm the GOP, I know this thing's going to collapse. I want it to collapse now while the Democrats are in power, not I win, which they're likely to win. And I can say, okay, the wind's at my back. I'm probably going to win. If it's going to collapse, if it falls apart now, I can say to the Democrats, it's all your fault. It fell apart. Boy, what a disaster. I can wipe Biden out and his team out with it. And then I win and I got a clean slate. I think part of it. But let me say this. I'm not saying that in a negative way. Everybody on Capitol Hill knows how the game is played. And if it was the other way, the Democrats would play the same thing. But here's for all the bravado that they give us. Well, Ukraine can stand up to the Russians and they're going to knock them out any day. And, we still get some of that crap in the news. The Ukrainians shot down a Zircon missile. Literally, there was an article that said Vladimir Putin was humiliated when the Ukrainians shot down a Zircon missile. Within a month or two, they ain't going to have nothing to shoot down anything. So I think the games are being played, but I think the people on Capitol Hill now are angling for this thing's going. If you know it, and I know it, they know it. I think they're angling now the power game. When it falls apart, how can we benefit? How can you know what I mean, Scott?
Yeah, the interesting thing, though, is not every Republican's on board. We know, for instance, Representative Turner of the House Select Intelligence Committee, he's not on board with this. He's a man, along with others, who have bought into the idea that we can defeat Russia strategically using Ukraine as the proxy. And he actually believes that Ukraine was in the process of defeating Russia. And all we have to do is to continue funding Ukraine, and we can achieve the strategic defeat of Russia. And now he's looking at the fact that Johnson ain't going to move this bill forward, and so he plays a stupid game. He leaks intelligence information, declares a national emergency. The Russians have this game-changing capability, and the only way that we can deal with this game-changing capability is to defeat Russia in Ukraine. We have to get this money forward. Everybody has seen through it. And sadly, as an intelligence officer, I will say this: I don't know what the intelligence was. I'm not read anymore, but I'm not stupid either. I used to play the game. I used to be read into every single program one could imagine, and I know how to read between the lines in terms of what's being done. So you have people who are familiar with calling it raw intelligence. Well, there's two kinds of raw intelligence, basically. There's the signals intelligence. That means that we somehow have tapped into a line of communication inside Russia where things are being discussed. And then there's the human intelligence, where we have access to reporting from a human who has access to this information. Raw intelligence means that we're just receiving the raw data. that people have written up a quick report that say, hey, got this in, this is what it's saying, boom. But it hasn't gone on to the analyst who receives it and says, all right, let's try and put this in perspective. Let's flesh this out. So it's not a fleshed out report. And he's leaked this. The other danger of leaking raw intelligence is that it hasn't been put through a system that disguises the source and method, because it's so raw, it pretty much tells you where it came from. And he has released this. And now you're the Russians sitting there going, wait a minute. He's talking about a conversation we had last week. That's raw intelligence. And we had 5 people around that table. So immediately investigate all 5 and the people around them, find out if any one of them is a compromised source. But the other thing is, what reports were written? How were they communicated? To whom were they communicated? And let's just go ahead and proactively shut everything down.
You're right. You can chase it down. You can chase it down
so now,
and figure out where it came from.
Now you're the intelligence guy. Let's say Scott Ritter was the guy who ran this thing. I mean, read The $1 Billion Spy. It talks about the recruitment of Adolf Tolkachev and how he was run by the CIA in the 1980s. They call him a $1 billion spy because the information he gave the United States saved us billions of dollars in taxpayers' money, because we were able to know what the Russians were doing and react to it, the Soviets were doing and react to it. And read about what it took to manage him, and then what happened when he was compromised, arrested, debriefed, killed, and that information went away. There's another example. Back in before 9/11, we knew that Osama bin Laden was using a very specific satellite phone, and he was communicating exclusively on that. And so we built a satellite very quickly. The National Reconnaissance Office said, build us a satellite that intercepts that signal. We're going to put it right over Afghanistan. We're going to intercept that signal so we can kill the son of a gun. And they built the satellite and they launched it. And then the New York Times wrote in there that the satellite is believed to be able to intercept satellite communications of, high value target like Osama bin Laden. The next day, the Osama bin Laden's satellite phone went off air. And we now have a $1 billion satellite over Afghanistan that can't do anything because it was designed to do that. Turner just compromised sensitive American sources and methods to the detriment, because let's say that the intelligence is accurate. It describes a developing situation that you want to continue to monitor. And he just basically, to score stupid political points, shut down the collection stream. It's done. The Russians will never allow you to collect on that again because they're going to change the whole way they work. They're that professional. Turner, if he, in any other circumstance, he should be arrested and tried for treason, literally. And if this was a human source and he's arrested and he's killed by the Russians, as they are wont to do, then he should be tried for murder because he is complicit in the murder of a man who put his life in the hands of an American intelligence officer. Turner should, at a minimum, lose his security clearance. I mean, I'm stunned right now that they continue to allow him to have a security clearance. They should immediately shut it down and say, you've lost it. Your security clearance is revoked, which means you can't be the chairman of the intelligence committee before. So go off and do something like manage the dog catcher committee, because that's all you're worth doing right now.
One of the things that I thought was that this is possibly a response. Clearly the Tucker Carlson interview was extremely I'll say well received by a lot of people around the world who felt that they wanted to learn more, who felt that people should know more about the truth. Extremely impactful. I also, as soon as I saw this, oh my God, we got to be scared about the Russians. We can't tell you what it is, but it's something so horrifying that you should go hide under your bed. I thought to myself, okay, so that's a counterattack based on the success of the Carlson interview. And when I say success, I just mean giving people information that they needed. Your thoughts on a week out, the Tucker Carlson interview, and, in hindsight and current sight and all that, the impact of it, the importance of it.
Well, it's curious. Vladimir Putin has given an interview to a Russian journalist where he talks about the Carlson interview, and he says what I've said. He said, I expected Tucker to be more prepared. He didn't ask the questions that I would have liked him to ask. And Tucker's funny because Tucker, but I'm going to get to the genius of Tucker pretty soon. You know, so we have that and all that, but Tucker wasn't there to play the gotcha game. Tucker was there to do this big impact interview, and the impact wasn't, the questions he asked and how he defeated. I mean, Chris Wallace, Tucker Carlson is a disgrace because he didn't seek to try and embarrass the Russian president as I would have had I been given the interview, which is why you'll never be given the interview.
Right.
So you're a zero impact player. You don't count. You're not on the game board. Tucker Carlson, it wasn't just on the game board. He advanced to the front. He got the interview. 1.1 billion people have watched it around the world right now, and that number is just going to grow. And that was the purpose of it. People are having discussions right now about the interview, about what Putin said, and it's having an impact. There's a senator, Tommy, whatever his name is, who was holding up the
Tuberville, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. He was holding up the promotions for a while, but he came out and he said, "Man, what I learned from that interview is Putin wants to talk. So why are we funding a war when we could end it just by talking to Putin?" That's the kind of conversation that's going on right now, and it scares the heck out of these people in power. But now, Tucker, look, let me put it this way. This is the difference between Tucker Carlson and me. In May, I was in Russia, and I went to a market, and a cameraman followed me, and we bought, stuff for the road, snacks, little luncheon snacks, this, that, and the other thing, and put it out there. And I paid. And the guy beforehand, he said, the guy with the camera said, "How much would this cost you in America?" I said, "It's about $35 worth of stuff." He said, "How much did you pay?" I said, $6. Okay. And I said, and this is what I see throughout there. And we did that. And we put the clip out there. It got on Telegram. It got, 3 views. And, because that's what I generate. Very few views. Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, goes there and he goes to the marketplace. And of course, he's very dramatic. He and his boys, because they have a budget. I had a $30 budget.
Yeah.
He went out there and he said, "What would we buy for a week?" And so they went and they filled up a shopping cart with a week. And then he sat down there. "What do you think this is going to cost?" "I think it's going to probably cost, $400, I think was it. And it came in at $106 or something like that. Same thing. We did the same thing, but his home run out of the park. Everybody's going to watch it. That's the genius of Tucker Carlson, that he got 1 billion plus people to watch this interview. He has a discussion take. It dominated the Dubai World Governing Council that they're having right now, or symposium or whatever they call it in Dubai. It's dominating the internet now, and now he's putting out these clips. Clever. God, I'm just sitting there going, I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? He goes to their McDonald's. He buys the cheeseburger. Delicious, just like ours. Yeah, the French fries, just like ours. The price, not like ours, much cheaper. I don't want to admit it, but this morning I bought a McDonald's breakfast for me and my wife because we were running behind schedule and we didn't have the healthy breakfast that we normally eat here. So you swing through the drive-through, and just getting the number 1 and the number 8 meal with a large coffee and a large Diet Coke cost me almost $20.
Jeez.
And I'm sitting there going, wow, $20 for the privilege of getting a heart attack.
Right.
Because that's what you're going to get if you keep eating the McDonald's drive-through. But, Tucker is a master at what he does. I continue to be frustrated that he didn't prepare better. And he was talking about the McDonald's build, and suddenly he said something very insightful. He said that Vladimir Putin banned GMO, in the food. And he goes, "I probably should have asked him about that." Yes, Tucker, you probably should. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your questions don't matter. Putin made that clear. His questions were stupid. They didn't matter. What mattered is 1 billion plus people around the world have watched it, and you've generated a process now that is radicalizing. That's the term that Tucker's fond of using right now. The subway radicalized him. The ersatz McDonald's radicalized him. The experience in the supermarket radicalized him, and he's now radicalizing Americans and non-Americans around the world about the reality of Russia. And he says some very poignant things. It's very simplistic, but it's very poignant. He says, in America, where we put the premium on, freedom and freedom of speech and, this, that, and the other thing, how free are you when you get mugged, raped, robbed, when you live in a society that's collapsing, when everything's ugly, you're afraid to do this? Are you truly free? And then in Russia, where wrongly, but he says, where they don't have freedoms, where they don't do this, where the man is not this, that, and the other thing, but you can buy stuff, you can afford, you can walk, there's no crime, there's no, this, that, and the other thing, which leadership has failed their people? And that's a viable point. I could debate Tucker all day long about, freedoms, and things of that nature. Russia actually is pretty damn free. I mean,
and we're pretty damn not. Ask Julian Assange. I mean, we could go on and on.
But the bottom line is, when Tucker's interview first came out, I was probably harsher on him than he deserved, because he knew what he's doing. Let's just be clear about that. Tucker's a smart guy. He's been in this game a long time. He knows how the game's played, and he played it brilliantly. I was frustrated because I'm a Russian expert, or I'm a Russian specialist. People question my expertise. That's okay. Fair enough. But I know a lot about Russia. I'm interested in Russia. I study Russia. I try to absorb these things. And so I'm caught up in the minutia. I'm caught up in the detail. I'm caught up in, the nuance. And I'm listening to his interview going, superficial. And it was, but that's not the point. What was the point is it was, meaning it existed. It happened. The longer I pull back from this, I'm still frustrated. I'll always be frustrated, just from a professional standpoint. It could have been so much more, but really, because it wasn't meant to be so much more. Even Putin was frustrated. Putin was like, I really was looking forward to these tougher questions. He said, I'm sort of disappointed by this interview because I was ready for the tough questions, and they didn't come. I think Putin and I are both sitting there like this, but I think we also both realize that, Putin is talking about this now because the whole world's talking about it.
If I could add this, as a guy who practices Zen, right, and studies Zen, it's kind of like things just happen the way they should. You know what I mean? Okay. Here's the way. So whenever something like that happens, and me and me also, I'm like, but why didn't he ask him about this and that? And there was that and blah, 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 right? No, Russiagate. But then I think about this. Here's the other part of it. The average slump on the street who doesn't study this stuff, that's the kind of questions they'd ask. The average person, if your audience is Garland Nixon and Andre Martianov and, Chaz Freeman and people like that, you got one kind, not putting myself in the intellectual position with those people, but at least I study the subject, right? If your audience, okay, great, there's questions that must be asked. But if your audience is my dad, I'll always go back to him. He was a longshoreman. He wore a hard hat. He liked to work on cars and go fishing, right? That's America, right?
That's it.
Right? Okay. If your audience is that guy, those were pretty good questions. Because you ask a question that's, well, what about this? But then he got out of the way. And then Putin could take it wherever he wanted because he wasn't boxed in by a question. What are your thoughts, or what do you think about that?
No, you're this is the genius of what Tucker did. He didn't allow the idiots, the academics, the experts, the specialists to get in the way of what he wanted to achieve. Tucker took on the role of everyman. Tucker became your father. Tucker became, my brother-in-law. Tucker became the guy next door. Tucker became everyman. Who isn't an expert? People whose eyes glaze over and roll when you and I start talking about, the different oblasts and the difference between Novosibirsk and Ekaterinburg. And oh my God, in Ekaterinburg, they have the legacy of the Tsar being killed. And then in the Novosibirsk, we have the Omsk River that has this and then people are going, we don't care, but how do you reach those people? McDonald's got my attention. What's going on, Tucker? You been to McDonald's lately? Yep, Tucker, I've been to McDonald's. I went to the drive-thru this morning. What'd it cost you? A whole bunch of money, my hard-earned money. I work 40 plus hours a week. I make this money. I go to McDonald's. They've raised the price. I ain't buying the same burger today. Well, guess what, Mr. Burger Buyer? I just went to McDonald's. It's the same thing. And I bought 2 cheeseburgers. What did I pay? A fraction of what you pay. Son of a gun. You don't say that. How can them commies do that? Didn't we just, put sanctions on them? Shouldn't their economy be hurting? I mean, what's going on? Are you telling me our policy is a failure? And Tucker Carlson, with 2 cheeseburgers, just made the point. Our policy's failing. Take them to the supermarket. Look, I can tell you right now, the price I'm paying today when I go and buy food, my kids are coming home for the weekend. It's their birthday. So we're going to, we have to stock up. We're no longer empty nests. So we're going out and my wife and I are both sitting there going, holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
When you double the people coming to the house, the price goes way up. And then we're like, but we're buying less, but we're paying the same price we bought when we had 6 people at the house last year. I mean, the prices are out of this world. I could sit there and talk about, Russian agricultural policies, how they've reinvested in the small farmer and and most Americans go. But what Tucker did is he went to the supermarket and he said, let me buy what an American buys. And he showed it to the Americans and they're going, yep, that's what I got. Turkey, this, that. First thing they're going is, wait a minute. There's a hell of a lot of food in that supermarket. Where'd they get that food? How come the Russians have food? Didn't we sanction them? Are you telling me the sanctions policy is not working? Bingo. Tucker Carlson scores another goal. And then he shows them the price and they're going, whoa, if I could pay $100 a week to buy that much food, that means that I have more money to go fishing. I have more money to buy that carburetor I wanted to put into that car that I've been trying to repair for the last year and a half. These are the things. Tucker Carlson is every man. His approach is genius. I have learned to respect him so much more because he's teaching me how more of the most effective way to communicate to an American audience. I've been trying to communicate to an American audience for a long time now. And I get, as you know, we get respect. We get decent numbers. People watch. I respect everybody who watches this, but we don't get Tucker Carlson numbers because you and I are trying to actually put forward substance. We're trying our best to put, hard facts on the table that have been assessed, through expert lenses and all this kind of stuff. And there's a group of people that want that and they're here, they're absorbing it. But there's a group of people like your father, and I'm not picking on your father. You brought him up.
No, I mean,
my neighbor, my brother, people who are saying, hey, that expert stuff, that's your thing. Enjoy. I'm going fishing. That's it. That's what he wants to do. Now, don't talk to him about fishing because he's going to talk about how to get the right fly at the right time of the year, is this the right weight line and all that? And I'm sitting there going, so when you talk fishing, I go dead. When I talk Russia, they go dead. But Tucker Carlson knows how to get to the fisherman. He knows how to get to the longshoreman. He knows how to get to the truck driver. He knows how to get to everyday American. And that's the genius because he has accomplished more in a week than, I'm not picking on you, Garland, but then you and I have accomplished in
a lifetime. In our
Bingo.
lifetime, to be quite frank, more than a week than we
So
could hope.
We got to call it as we see it. And Tucker Carlson broke the code. He's a media genius. Now, that doesn't mean that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, because we can, there's things, but that doesn't matter. Though that's peripheral garbage. Tucker Carlson, the communicator, has got, this is, I think, what frustrated Democrats and Republicans alike about Ronald Reagan, the great communicator. Because you could always sit there and go, but he's not the smartest man in the block. He's not this. It doesn't matter. When Ronald Reagan got up there and communicated, America listened. They liked him. When Tucker Carlson gets up there and communicates, there's 1 billion people that are listening, and most of them like him.
I got to add this. Let's be honest. I've heard people who are not even in anything at all, care less about politics, say, well, one thing about Donald Trump, he's funny. You know what I mean? I'll say that about Trump. You ain't got to like Trump. But I'm watching the other day and he comes on and they said, oh, yeah, do you think Joe Biden's behind this attack on you? And he says, Joe Biden doesn't even know he's alive. He's not behind anything. I sat there and laughed for 5 minutes. People don't understand that other thing too, and that is, and I'll tell you this, I've heard it in the Black community. I've heard people just say, "Yeah, I was broke under, I'm broke now. I wasn't broke under Trump." Simple things like that. The regular old working class people, when it comes down to it, it always comes down to, I got 3 kids I got to feed, and it costs me X amount of dollars. I want to, and like you said, my outboard motors broke down and I need to buy a new power head for it, and it costs $1,400 and I can't get that. It's going to take me till next fishing season to buy it. I'm going to miss a whole summer because I can't afford to fix my outboard. I know a guy that told me that. With all the prices, my wife will kill me if I buy a new power head for my outboard because we got it, and my son's going to go to football camp and blah, blah, blah. And things are tight for people. And when they look and they say, well, what, you mean to tell me we're sending $100 billion over there to do something to hurt these people, blah, 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 and they're living better than I am? What's happening here? That's all they care about. Let's, since we don't have but so much time here. So now Israel's talking about Netanyahu. They're talking about, we got to attack Hezbollah. They're starting to bomb Lebanon. There's the Biden administration. I don't know what the hell's going on with. They're complete idiots. It seems they're trying to bite off more than they can chew. They're going to keep messing around and step on a landmine here. Anyway, your thoughts on the current state of affairs with our other collapsing partner, Israel?
Well, I mean, Israel's collapse is our collapse. I don't want to get too emotional here, but how can you not get emotional? When you have, a 5-year-old girl on the phone begging to be rescued, and they send the rescuers. Israel says they can come in, and then Israel kills the rescuers and the girl. It was all a trap. Israel bombs a mosque solely for the purpose of killing women and children, solely for the purpose, because there was no other reason to bomb the mosque. Every day, the body parts, the bodies, the dead babies pile up. And in America, it's not moving the political needle at all. You have Tony Blinken traveling around talking about the progress he's making while the kids keep dying. If nothing defines failure than that, I mean, that is the definition of failure. We have failed morally. Our moral compass is 100%.
It's a moral collapse. Yeah, it's a moral collapse.
Yeah. And in Israel, I mean, anybody who's been listening to me speak, there was a time when I was a supporter of Israel. I didn't mean I thought Israel was perfect, but I was like, they're in a tough situation. I didn't pay as much attention to the Palestinian question as I probably should have. I listened it through the Israeli perspective. And the Israelis that I talked to were pretty open about the complexity of Israeli politics and the fear they had about how the right would take advantage of the influx of Russian and Ukrainian refugees in the 1990s to tip the balance to their favor, and that you'd see Israel gravitate more to the right, and that the greatest threat to Israel's long-term security came from the right wing of the Israeli electorate. I mean, I was told that in 1998. And so I watched and I watched and I watched. It wasn't, I mean, and look, I was around in 2014. I saw what happened when Israel went into Gaza. I was around in 2006. I saw what happened when Israel bombed West Beirut, bombed Lebanon. And but I glossed it over because I was looking at things from an Israeli perspective. October 7th shook me because I realized that, suddenly I went, it ain't what it seems to be. That there's the reason, because I said, why did Hamas do this? What was the reason for this attack? What was the purpose of this? It was a military attack. It wasn't the act of terrorism. That's the first thing that set me off. I'm listening to the Israelis and I'm going, I want to be on your side. I really want to be on your side here, but you're lying through your teeth. This wasn't what you're saying it is. And then why would you have to lie about this? What are you trying to hide? And apparently they're trying to hide everything, the reality of what they've done. And suddenly, for the first time, I focused on the Palestinian issue and I started scraping. I'm going, wait a minute. And it was an enlightened moment. Israel has lost all credibility. I don't want to get you in trouble, so I got to watch what I say on the platform. But it's a disgusting nation populated by a disgusting people. There's no redemption there, because even the Israelis that that I used to say, well, no, but there's some good Israelis out there who believe that. If they are, you can count them on one hand, because I'm not seeing good Israelis. I'm seeing people justifying this. People outright saying it's good to kill. Hell, excuse me, my language going bad. I'm not a longshoreman today. I have to be careful. But the head of Mossad's, the unit that does hostage recovery and things like that, had a conversation with an Israeli journalist. Garland, they basically said that any child over the age of 4 has to be treated as an adult and terminated. That's it.
No, that is pure. I mean, that is in fact pure fascism. It's pure genocide. It's exactly that. You know what it reminds me of, Scott? It reminds me of when these guys in Ukraine go marching along with Hitler tattoos all over them, you know, holding a dog-eared copy of Mein Kampf, screaming Sieg Heil, and then the U.S. State Department goes, "Hey, there's no. What are you talking about? That's Russian propaganda. There's no Nazis there." And now, when the Israeli leadership says, "Yeah, kill all the kids with genocides. That's what we do. Yay, go genocide," and the U.S. says, "Oh no, that we see no evidence of genocide." They're screaming, "We're Nazis." They're screaming, "We want to commit genocide." The only people that are saying they don't want to do that are the people on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, look, you know, I've been interviewed by a number of Russian journalists. One of them, Vladimir Solovyov, and you know, he's in the tradition of American talk show hosts. I mean, we see it here, where you get things spun up, you say outrageous things because you want to generate a response and all that. You know, but I've also met him in person, and he's a very knowledgeable, very rational, very intelligent man who actually spent a lot of time in the United States, and he knows America very well. So he's playing a media game when he gets on TV. And he had some shows where some things were said that were, you know, stretching the boundaries. How do we respond? Sanction that son of a gun. Sanction him because he dare give a platform to somebody who dare says things that, you know, we find to be morally reprehensible. Okay, that's our standard. That's our standard. This Mossad guy who is still active, he said basically we need to kill every child over the age of 5 and over. They're treated as adults. We kill them. They're all Hamas. He will meet tomorrow with his CIA counterpart, with his State Department counterpart. Why are we meeting with this guy? This guy literally articulated the murder of children, the murder of innocents. He is a literal war criminal. And yet we're going to meet with him tomorrow as if it didn't happen. We're going to sit down across from him and they're going to say, all right, now, how do we, you know, we're going to meet with the Qataris next week. We need to do this. America's broke. Israel has broken us. I mean, because we are so we are so programmed not to be critical of Israel, to support. Come on, people. You know, we have this bill in front of Congress right now for all this money. It's like $98 billion, whatever it is, when you add up all the Taiwanese money, Israeli money, and all this stuff. But wait a minute. Aren't American airplanes still landing in Israel, discharging artillery shells? No. Where's that coming from? Oh, Israel's so special that we don't need congressional permission to continue to support them. And we are flowing military equipment in today without congressional authority. Now, one would like to say, well, isn't that a violation of the Constitution? Well, it could be if Congress really gave another term I can't use. But the point is, Congress doesn't, because Congress is bought and paid for by Israel. Israel is bragging AIPAC, and I keep, you know, people, well, AIPAC isn't Israel. Yes, it is. Yes, it is Israel. And they're putting $100 million of Israeli money on the table to buy an election in 2024, and they're not hiding it. Now, I imagine, Garland, if you and I went out and we met with the Russian ambassador and Russian businessmen and all that, and we came up and we said, we're putting $100 million on the table to buy members of Congress who support Russian policy. Now, you and I might believe that's the right thing to do, but most Americans would go, that ain't how this works, pal. Arrest you guys, kick them out. Nobody interferes with our election. And that's the right approach. Nobody interferes with the American election. Israel buys the American election. They bought everybody. They bought Biden. They bought everybody in the Senate. They bought everybody in the House. And if you don't support that money that was supposed to go to help you get reelected, they'll use to primary you. Not because they know that the opponent's going to be different, but they said, support us or die. That's your alternative. Support us or we primary you and you don't get reelected. This is why nothing changes. Nobody can step up right now and do the right thing, which is to condemn Israel with every ounce of our being. Because what Israel is doing is destroying our credibility, not just as a nation, but as a people. Because if you're going to call yourself an American, then you are defined by what your country does, whether you like it or not. There's a lot of people out there. I don't support this. You can't paint me. I just painted you, do. Boom, boom. You are a genocide supporter if you're an American citizen. I protest every day. Doesn't matter. Your government's doing this stuff. Whatever you're doing is not enough. You can't just protest. You have to change the system. And if you're not changing the system, then you're facilitating this mass murder. America's in deep trouble right now because our policy has failed across the board. Thomas Friedman wrote an op-ed last week where he talked about a new Biden doctrine. There's a new Biden doctrine, and it's going to change the world. It's new. It's revolutionary. Well, what is the Biden doctrine? 3 things. 1, stand up to Iran. I thought we were doing that already, Tom. We've been standing up to Iran for a long time now.
What the hell does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't know what it means.
You know what I mean?
Bombing them. Well, we're bombing them. Opposing their nuclear program. Well, we do that already. Sanction them. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, Tom. How's this a new policy? Well, wait a minute. Let me get to stage 2. Stage 2 is support a Palestinian state. Tom, you do know that when Biden came into office, the first thing he said about Israel is that we support a Palestinian state and we're going to work with Israel to make this happen. But then they did the exact opposite. They worked to normalize relations and all that kind of stuff. We've been given, hot air to this for a long time. But not just any Palestinian state. Support a demilitarized Palestinian state. Well, is it really a Palestinian state if it can't protect itself? Demilitarized means de-Hamasified.
What I mean is a support a de-Palestinized Palestine state where you kill all the Palestinians, where you actually have the state, but there's people in it. That seems to be their plan. Yeah.
So that there's nothing new there. This is and then the last part is we have to have a strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia that's hinged on the notion of normalized relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Dude, we've been trying that forever. There's nothing new about what Thomas Friedman says. But the point is they're repackaging this as if it's something new, and it's failing because it's premised upon failed policies. There's nothing new in this approach. And so we are headed towards a disaster. If one of the things that he talks about in his op-ed is we have to, what's called the double bluff. We have to call the double bluff. We have to call Iran's bluff. Because what he says is Iran's been using proxy forces, this axis of resistance, to weaken us while Iran sits back and does nothing. And therefore, it's our job to make Iran pay a price. Well, that ain't going to work, buddy. First of all, these proxies that you talk about are sort of capable of kicking our butts on their own. They don't need Iran's support. Case example A, the Houthi. B, Hamas. They're sort of they're surviving, which they're not supposed to do. And now if Hezbollah comes in, they're going to thump you too. So it's a fail policy. But the other bluff is to call Benjamin Netanyahu's bluff. Well, I don't know. It seems like the president's been trying to do that. We keep hearing about how he's having this tough conversation in private. But Benjamin Netanyahu is ignoring him, doubling down. They're again, I get emotional here, but what's going on in Rafah is just, my God, it's as if it's as if we were sitting here watching Auschwitz and watching the trains bring the Jews in, and watching the Jews come off, and watching the selection, watching them go into the gas chamber, watching the bodies come out, the bodies shoveled into the crematorium, and we're sitting there going, no, they're not gassing them. No, it's not happening. No. They're giving them full employment. They're being inoculated with vaccines to make their life well. No, it's genocide happening right in front of your eyes. Genocide happening right in front of our eyes. The Israelis right now, as we speak, are bombing Rafah, killing little children, and we're not doing a damn thing about it. America, this defines you. This is who you are. What are you doing about it? never mind. I just get very frustrated by
I'm
this. I
with you,
lose
man. I'm with
objectivity.
you. I'm with you. And they're clapping. Well, you know what? Going to be interesting. This is going to be a very
I just have to
interesting
laugh at
electoral
one
year.
comment. I'm not supposed to read your comments, but one of your guys said, "Yeah, but Taylor Swift."
Yeah,
It's the perfect
exactly.
comment. It's the
Exactly.
perfect comment. Yeah,
And you
Taylor
know what?
Swift.
You know what? And here we're like, we've got to send 50 billion or whatever for that. We got to start troubling, oh, Taiwan, they got to have blah, blah, blah. They got to have weapons. They got all this money we got to spend, right? And this country, like yesterday, my office is in DC. And yesterday they were like, hey, Garland, be careful because there's like a horrible crime wave in DC and people are getting robbed. And I'm like, oh, God. Well, good thing I only like catch the subway into my office and go home. And they're like, yeah, be careful. 3 cops shot yesterday morning. I mean, it's just literally 3 police officers were shot. It's just an absolute crime wave, right? Then we have a Super Bowl. People are like they always do. They got their jerseys. They're walking down the street, and somebody comes out and starts spraying, rounds all over the place, hitting 22 people. People, either you're stepping over homeless people, you're running from a robbery, you're at a friggin' Super Bowl parade and rounds are flying. America ain't the safest place in the world. And most people are saying perhaps they could spend a couple pennies to do something to try to stabilize this country. And they're like, we ain't interested. We got the Ukraine, they're creating chaos everywhere, and they can't even see that this place falls apart. You get to the point where people won't go to Disney World, where they won't go to games, where they won't go to anything because people are getting horrified by these mass shootings. They'll do nothing about anything. And that's where we are. Oh, I know you're just about out of time, Scott. Have you got one final word?
No, I again, let's circle back to where we started, the genius of Tucker Carlson, because by doing what he's doing, showing, Moscow, we have to admit he's not showing Russia. I will tell you, I've been to Russia
Right.
and it's mirrored. So the idea that, I mean, Moscow is nice. They get a
Yeah.
lot of money. There's 13 million people there and, it's clean and everything. And when you get outside of Moscow, and you get into the factory city, what the hell do you think a factory city looks like? Okay, it's a factory city, but it's nice. They have nice restaurants. They have supermarkets full of food. They, flushing toilets, believe it or not. Russia's a nice place to live, a nice place to live. And I never once, anytime that I was in Russia, felt in danger from the citizens of Russia. I could have stopped. And again, is there drug use in Russia? Sure, there is. I'm sure there is.
Sure.
Is there crime in Russia? They have prisons. They're full of people who commit horrible crimes. Sure, there is. But the criminals aren't walking free. They're arrested, tried, put in jail. Could I find trouble in Russia if I wanted to? Absolutely. I could probably go out and find a gang. I could find drugs. I could get beat up and mugged and shot if I wanted to do that. But that's hidden in the shadows of society, the way it used to be hidden in America. You had to go look for trouble in America to find it. But now in Russia, if I'm in the park, I'll give you just an example of the mindset in Russia. I was in Novosibirsk in the end of April, early May. And I thought that one of the things I said is, while I'm in Russia, I'm going to be physically fit. Well, no, that went down the tube because I was working very hard. But I got up in the morning, I went to the hotel gym, I worked out. Then I went out to go for a jog. It was like, minus 10 Celsius, which is cold in America. I don't know what it is, but in snowflakes are going. So I'm running around and I go out to the opera and I look at the statues and I'm sitting there admiring. And suddenly this elderly lady comes up and she's all dressed for me. And she's one of the ladies that cleans things, because Russia is a clean place. And it's a clean place because they have an army of people that go out and sweep things up and pick things up and clean it up. And she comes up and she starts berating the hell out of me, yelling at me about what I was wearing. How dare, because I was in shorts and a t-shirt, freezing to death. But she's like, you got to go back to the hotel. You have to get dressed properly. You can't, because she cared. She cared. They care. The Russians care about you. They're a caring people. In America, again, I mean, I can't say I'm ashamed of this because I've been living here for a while, but coming home after I drop my wife off at work, there's the place where the guy has the sign, I am a veteran, homeless veteran and all that. And if I have money in my wallet, I tend to stop and give it to him. Now, I know I'm feeding a heroin addiction. I know I'm feeding alcohol and all that, but I can't go by and not support a homeless veteran, except that maybe a week or so ago, I went there and, you're a former cop. I'm a former intelligence officer. You understand where you're being cased. You can pick it up. So the guy's there with the sign, but as I'm rolling down my window, other people are approaching my car. And I'm like, that ain't right. What's going on here?
Right. Yep.
And, this something is wrong here. And the guy was looking, he had that look like, something's about to go down. So I put my window up and I ran a red light. I got the hell out of there. I just like, boom, gone. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was paranoid, whatever. Right. I don't stop for that guy anymore. I don't stop for any of them there anymore. I've learned how to ignore this problem. I've become immune. When I first moved to Albany, if I went down Clinton Street and I saw the houses boarded up because it's a poor part of town, my kids would be in the car and they were little back then. And Daddy, why is this happening to them? Why, when we go down our street in Delmar, houses aren't boarded up? And I said, well, because white people live where we live, and this is a black part of town, and they just don't care. But Daddy, we have to care about all humans, don't we? Yes, you just shamed me. My daughter shamed me by pointing out the fact that I was driving down Clinton Avenue and I wasn't losing it because people were suffering. In America, we've become immune to these problems. We see the homeless and we just keep going. We see the people that have addiction problems and we just keep going. We see crumbling neighborhoods and we just keep going. We've become hardened to this. We come back to our little suburban reality where everything's good, but it's not good because the guy next door can't pay his bills. He's going to lose his house. We've had neighbors on our street suddenly disappear because they couldn't make the payment anymore. And they're done. They're finished. Did we call them up and say, hey, what can we do to help? Do you need help? We understand you're in trouble. Nope. Didn't do that because you can't. First of all, we don't have the wherewithal to help.
Right.
But on the other hand, because you'd have to help everybody. Is it my job as a citizen, an individual to save society? Well, yes, the answer is yes. I have to be that old lady that approaches the idiot wearing the t-shirt and shorts, tell him to get inside and get dressed properly because it's the wrong thing to do. Russia is not a bad place. And I think Tucker Carlson is radicalizing America about this. And I want to thank Tucker Carlson for the work he's doing. And in the process, confronting me with the fact that I should become more radicalized about what's going on here in America, that there's things we need to be doing. Maybe I need to start looking out. How do we help the homeless? What can I do to help that? Are there people out there that I can go to and we can try and solve this? Because government's not doing it, Garland. Government has failed us. Government has failed us, has failed our society. And if we continue to rely on government to fix these problems, they're just going to get worse. Anyways, that's the final thought I had.
Everybody go to Scott Ritter. I know you got to run, Scott. So go to scottritterextra.com and you can find out what Scott's doing. And when you go to scottritterextra.com, there are ways that you can support Scott. Look on there, look for your donate buttons, look for your ways to become a regular contributor, and scottritterextra.com. Thanks a lot, Scott, and look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, everybody. Well, that's that. And a couple of things. Number one, I'm not on a lot of on X, as it were. So please make sure you share this on all of your social media platforms. You see everything scrolling across the bottom there, whether it's Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee. I think I got my Cash App stuff in there. Anyone who can afford, please support the channel. And of course, rockfin.com/, I'm on Rumble, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. and you can become a member. Most of my stuff there is free. Some of it's premium here and there, but most of it's free. But it doesn't cost anything to be a member. If you can afford to become a premium member, it's $14.99 a month. So anybody that can afford to do that on Rockfin, I would helps the channel. Certainly appreciate it. And of course, go to Rumble. Everybody, please go to Rumble and become a member over there on Rumble in case they throw me off. Go be a Rockfin member and a Rumble member. I should have the exact same number of people on Rumble, Rockfin, and YouTube, because if they throw me off of YouTube, I certainly want to be able to connect with all of my friends. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace. I'm out.